So, Star Trek murder mysteries? It's happened. Let's talk about it. So, guys, Star Trek murder mysteries, and there are more than a few on Captain Kirk's Enterprise. Starting off with number one is season one, episode one, right? The very first episode, The Man Trap. When crew members aboard the Enterprise are found dead with their bodies drained of their salt, all the salt's gone, the crew must investigate the mysterious fatalities, eventually uncovering a shape-shifting salt vampire that has infiltrated the ship disguised as a crew member's former acquaintance. That's Bones. The investigation begins as a biological mystery on a remote archaeological outpost, then quickly escalates into a security breach on the starship itself. As the creature assumes the forms of various crew members to feed, paranoia spreads throughout the corridors. Dr. McCoy, Bones, faces an agonizing moral and emotional dilemma when the monster takes the shape of Nancy Crater, the woman he once loved, blurring the line between scientific duty and personal attachment. One of my favorites, one of the best in ways. Now, some people say it's sort of a creature feature, which it is, it's a monster, but it's a very poignant, sympathetic one if you've never seen it, and if you have, you know what I mean. So now, a little behind the scenes. This was actually, yes, the very first episode of Star Trek ever broadcast on the NBC TV network, September 8th, 1966. It was chosen to kick off the series because of its monster movie appeal. They wanted to really lean into the shocking creatures at the very start. Now, it was written by acclaimed Twilight Zone writer George Clayton Johnson and directed by veteran Mark Daniels. The creature design, featuring a fleshy suction cup hand structure, was a landmark achievement for the 1960s. Though creator Gene Roddenberry initially worried it would look too bizarre for mainstream audiences. And guys, again, if you look at this episode and you look at the makeup and the structure and the creation of that salt vampire, the salt creature, it is extraordinary. It still looks pretty amazing. I would say in all of Star Trek, that is definitely one of the very best monsters and one of certainly my favorites. The Conscience of the King. This is season 1, episode 13. Captain Kirk investigates whether an arriving actor, Anton Karidian, is actually the dreaded and infamous Kodos the Executioner, a mass murderer responsible for over 4,000 deaths. As Kirk digs into the past, crew members involved in the investigation end up murdered. The psychological weight of the episode hinges on Kirk's hidden history as a young witness to the Tarsus 4 massacre, where Governor Kodos starved half the colony to save the rest. As the body count rises, targeting the few remaining survivors who can positively identify the fugitive, Kirk must balance his duty as captain with a deeply personal vendetta. The investigation turns into a race against time as the killer closes in on the last remaining witnesses. And there's so many great things to love about this episode. Obviously, just the story. It's a murder mystery. A theater troupe of actors comes in. They're doing Shakespeare, so you get a taste of what it's like even hundreds of years in the future that people are still performing and loving Shakespeare in theater. And then, of course, the backstory and the connection of the young James T. Kirk with the veteran captain now. It's a great one of my favorites. Behind the scenes stuff. Ready? This episode was written by Barry Trivers and directed by Gerd Oswald. Now, it heavily leans in, as I said, to William Shakespeare's Hamlet, both in its structure and its themes and the title, which is derived from the famous line, "The play's the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king." Actor Arnold Moss delivers a memorable theatrical performance as Karidian, while Barbara Anderson plays his fiercely protective daughter Lenore. Now, because the production budget was so tight, the crew cleverly reused existing standing sets and relied heavily on dramatic lighting and classical line delivery to create the atmosphere of a traveling interstellar theater troupe. And I'll tell you, that's absolutely the case. The lighting in this episode, and I don't really, acknowledge or notice it as much. It is so good because this is a theatrical troupe, a theater troupe. They're putting on a play. But even when it's not focused on the troop itself, the lighting is really good. So if you guys just like production and television, certainly Star Trek, this is a winner.
Working.
Court Martial, episode 20 of season 1. During a red alert, Records Officer Commander Finney seemingly dies when his pod is jettisoned into an ion storm. Kirk is put on court-martial trial for criminal negligence and murder, leading Spock and McCoy to investigate and prove that Finney faked his own death to frame Kirk. This courtroom drama tests the foundational bonds of the Enterprise crew, as automated ship logs and computer records falsely testify against the captain, indicating he dropped the pod prematurely during a yellow alert rather than the red alert. While defense attorney Samuel T. Cogley fights to defend human intuition over infallible machine logic, Spock works behind the scenes to uncover the electronic anomalies, proving Finney is still alive, hiding aboard the ship. Now, in terms of Star Trek's drama, you can't get much better than Court Martial. Now, there's lots of episodes that are drama, but this is focused in on Kirk. Not only on Kirk in terms of his fate, but his relationship, his in connection, the interpersonal relationship between him and Finney. So, behind the scenes, written by Don M. Mankiewicz with revisions by Stephen W. Karabatsos, the episode explores an early look and a TV metaphor for the friction between humanity and advancing computer automation. The courtroom set was specifically constructed to look modern and imposing, utilizing stark architectural lines. Richard Webb, who plays the antagonist Benjamin Finney, he spent much of his time hidden away recording the audio in these cramped, sequestered areas to simulate his character's ghost-like presence haunting the ship's computer systems. And in terms of the drama, this is a great one. Again, if you want a good courtroom drama, this is your episode. And last but not least, in the Star Trek Murder Mysteries, Wolf in the Fold, one of my favorites, Season 2, Episode 14. Now, following a series of brutal ritualistic murders on the planet Argelius 2, a similar killing occurs aboard the Enterprise, leading Scotty to be accused. Kirk, Spock, and Bones must investigate the ship's computer logs and the psychological profiles to uncover the true culprit, an ancient incorporeal entity known as Rejek. So now Scotty is found standing over a mutilated body with a bloody knife, remembering nothing of the attack due to a temporary blackout. He doesn't know. He has no, response and explanation. With all circumstantial evidence pointing directly to him, Spock utilizes logic and the logical deduction on board the Enterprise computer to probe deeper into the history of similar unsolved murders across space, eventually tracing the entity across the millennia back to Earth's Jack the Ripper legends. And that's what's really fun about this. So it is a murder mystery, yeah. But in many ways, it goes back to Jack the Ripper, something that even the most casual murder mystery or murder, real-life murder fan would know. So now, behind the scenes, the episode was written by renowned sci-fi and horror author Robert Bloch, famous for writing the novel Psycho, which became Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece, starring Janet Leigh and Anthony Perkins, one of my favorite films. Now, he originally envisioned a scene where the characters drank multi-layered, mood-altering drinks called poussé cafés. But the network censors at NBC objected, fearing it looked too much like drug use, like they were getting stoned. So to solve the mystery visually on a standard TV budget, director Joseph Pevney blended traditional whodunit tropes with supernatural sci-fi lore, making Scotty the ultimate focal point of a classic frame-up story. Now, many fans look at James Doohan's acting in this episode as one of his most impressive and memorable of all time. And I have to agree, because when you're accused of murder and there's almost no way you can explain it, what are you going to do? And Jimmy Doohan, good old Scotty, rises to the channel, and it's a wonderful performance.
What's the best
sci-fi on YouTube?
On a sci-fi guy, of course.